Chapter 1070000. The alarm blares at 7:00 a.m., its shrill tone cutting through the hum of the city's ever-present white noise. Mike Henderson jolts awake, his body already conditioned to the rhythm of another Tuesday. The windshield wipers of a passing car thwack in a slow, hypnotic cadence outside his window, their metallic rhythm syncing with the pulse of the Time Is Yours billboard across the street, its luxury watch advertisement flickering in the pre-dawn gloom. The air smells of ozone and stale coffee. Mike groans, rubbing his temples as he reaches for his Neuralink interface, its cold prongs pressing into his skin. The device hums to life, flooding his vision with the day's schedule. Omni-Soft, 8:30 a.m. Project Sync meeting. Do not be late. He swipes it away with a sigh, already dreading the monotony ahead. The routine unfolds like a script he's memorized. He drags himself out of bed, the cheap synthetic fibers of his sheets clinging to his skin. The apartment is a cramped studio, its walls lined with the same peeling corporate-issued wallpaper, gray with faint geometric patterns meant to evoke efficiency. A single window overlooks the neon-saturated street below, where the Time Is Yours billboard casts its cold glow over the rain-slicked pavement. Mike pulls on the same rumpled dress shirt he wore yesterday, the same slacks, the same scuffed dress shoes. He doesn't bother checking his reflection. He knows what he'll see: sharp, angular features, perpetually tired eyes, a wiry build that makes him look like he's been stretched too thin. The face of a man who's already given up. The Opti-Meal dispenser in his kitchen whirs to life at the press of a button, extruding a grayish slab of protein and carbohydrates onto a biodegradable tray. He doesn't taste it as he chews. He never does. The monorail is next, a packed, silent commute where no one makes eye contact, where the only sound is the rhythmic thunk-thunk of the train's magnetic locks engaging. Mike leans against the window, watching the city blur past in streaks of neon and concrete. The rain never stops in Neo Viridian. It's always there, a fine mist that clings to everything, turning the streets into mirrors that reflect the sterile glow of corporate logos. The Omni-Soft lobby is a cavern of polished marble and flickering holograms, where the air smells like burnt coffee and antiseptic. Elena is already behind the counter of the lobby coffee shop, her dyed blue hair a jarring splash of color against the monochrome corporate aesthetic. She's humming to herself, her fingers tapping an impatient rhythm against the counter as she wipes down the espresso machine. Mike approaches and she looks up, her face breaking into the same cheerful smile she wears every Tuesday. "Good morning, Mike," she says, her voice too bright, too perfect. It grates on him as it always does. He grunts in response, sliding his corporate ID across the counter. "Black coffee. No sugar." Elena's fingers move with practiced efficiency, but today, Mike notices something he's never paid attention to before: the way her left pinky twitches when she's annoyed, the way her smile doesn't quite reach her eyes. A crack in the script. He watches her pour the coffee, the dark liquid swirling into the cup like ink in water. She slides it toward him and he reaches for it, but his hand hesitates. There's a smudge on the rim of the cup, a fingerprint or a smear of lipstick. He's never seen that before. "You okay, Mike?" Elena asks, tilting her head. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He blinks. "Yeah. Fine. But he is. Something is off. The smudge on the cup, the way her fingers tap, it's all wrong. Or maybe it's right. Maybe it's supposed to be this way." He doesn't know anymore. He takes the coffee and turns to leave, but then he pauses. He looks back at her. "Elena." She raises an eyebrow. "Yeah. Your hair," he says, nodding at the blue strands. "It's different." She touches it self-consciously, her smile faltering for just a second. "Oh. Yeah. I dyed it last night. Thought I'd try something new." Mike stares at her. "Last night? But last night never happened. Not for her. Not for anyone but him. He doesn't say anything else. He just nods and walks away, the coffee cup warm in his hand, the weight of the world pressing down on him like a physical force. The Omni Soft offices are a maze of open-plan cubicles and flickering monitors, where the air hums with the low drone of fluorescent lights and the occasional burst of forced laughter from a team-building exercise. Mike weaves through the sea of identical gray cubicles, nodding at the familiar faces of coworkers who don't really see him. Leo, his cubicle neighbor, is already hunched over his keyboard, his stained I-code t-shirt stretched over his gut. He looks up as Mike approaches, his face breaking into a grin. "Hey Mike, you got a sec to look at this?" "Not now, Leo." Mike cuts him off, dropping into his chair. He doesn't look at Leo. He doesn't look at anything. His screen flickers to life, displaying the same endless stream of code and status updates he's seen 1,000 times before. He rubs his temples, trying to ignore the gnawing sensation in his gut. Sarah Jenkins appears at the edge of his cubicle like a specter, her sharp professional attire immaculate, her gaze cold and assessing. "Mike," she says, her voice clipped. "Stand up in 5. Conference room B." Mike doesn't look up. "Yeah, I'll be there." Sarah lingers for a moment, as if she expects him to say something else. When he doesn't, she turns on her heel and strides away, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The stand-up is the same as it always is. Sarah drones on about utility scores and synergistic workflows, her voice a monotone that blends into the hum of the lights. Mike zones out, his mind drifting. He's done this 100 times. 1,000. He knows every word before she says it. Then she mentions the bug. "Critical delay in the system-wide sync yesterday," she says, her fingers tapping against the holographic display. 0.3 seconds. Minimal impact, but we're running diagnostics to ensure it doesn't recur. Mike freezes. He remembers that delay. He remembers the way the screen flickered, the way his neural link stuttered for a fraction of a second. He remembers the way the world seemed to pause, just for an instant, like a glitch in a corrupted file. But that was last Tuesday, wasn't it? His fingers tighten around the edge of the table. The room feels suddenly too small, the air too thin. He looks around at the faces of his coworkers, Leo, Sarah, the others, and for the first time he sees them differently. Not as people, but as scripts. As lines of code repeating the same actions, saying the same words over and over and over again. And he's the only one who remembers. The realization hits him like a physical blow. His breath catches in his throat. The room spins. Sarah is still talking, but he doesn't hear her. He's too busy staring at his hands, at the way they tremble slightly against the table. He's trapped. And no one else knows it. Mike's fingers hover over his keyboard, the glow of the monitor casting jagged shadows across his face. The stand-up ends and the office hums back to life around him, keyboards clacking, chairs rolling, the occasional burst of forced laughter from a coworker's cubicle. But Mike doesn't move. He stares at the timestamp in the corner of his screen, Tuesday, 7:00 a.m. The same time he woke up. The same time he always wakes up. His breath comes shallow. He minimizes the project dashboard and pulls up his personal logs, scrolling through the entries with a growing sense of dread. Last Tuesday, 7:00 a.m. Woke up. Drizzle. Billboard flickering. Elena's blue hair. The words blur together, identical, repetitive. He scrolls further. The Tuesday before that, same. And the one before that. And the one before that. A cold sweat prickles at the base of his skull. Leo clears his throat beside him. "Hey Mike, you got a sec to look at this?" Mike doesn't turn. His eyes are locked on the screen, on the endless loop of identical entries. "Not now, Leo." Leo hesitates. "It's just I said not now. Mike's voice is sharp, edged with something Leo doesn't recognize. Fear. Or maybe the absence of it. Leo shrinks back, his fingers twitching over his keyboard. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Mike doesn't acknowledge him. He's too busy staring at the timestamp, at the way it mocks him. Tuesday. Always Tuesday. He needs proof. He stands abruptly, his chair rolling back with a sharp screech. The office falls silent for a fraction of a second, heads turn, eyes flicker toward him, but Mike doesn't care. He strides toward Sarah's office, his pulse hammering in his throat. She's already at her desk, her back to him, her fingers flying over her holographic keyboard. Sarah. She doesn't turn. Mike. If this is about the sync delay, IT's handling it. It's not about the sync delay. She finally glances over her shoulder, her expression impatient. Then what? Mike swallows. His mouth is dry. I quit. Sarah blinks. Excuse me. I quit. He enunciates each word, slow and deliberate, like he's testing the weight of them. Effective immediately. A beat of silence. Then Sarah lets out a sharp, humorless laugh. Mike, it's 8:45 a.m. You can't just watch me. He turns on his heel and walks out. The office erupts. Gasps. Whispers. Leo's chair rolls back so fast it nearly topples. Someone, probably HR, starts shouting after him, but Mike doesn't stop. He doesn't look back. He storms through the lobby, past Alina's coffee shop, she's mid-pour, her blue hair catching the light, her mouth open in shock, past the security desk, the guard doesn't even try to stop him, and out into the rain-slicked street. The city air hits him like a slap. Cold. Wet. Alive. He stands there for a long moment, breathing hard, his hands clenched into fists. He quit. He actually did it. And nothing happened. No security. No police. No consequences. A laugh bubbles up in his chest, sharp and disbelieving. He tilts his head back, letting the rain hit his face, and laughs until his sides ache. The electronics store is high-end, all sleek black displays and hollow advertisements for neural upgrades. Mike walks in like he owns the place. The clerk, a young guy with a corporate-issued smile, looks up. Can I help you, sir? Mike doesn't answer. He strides past the counter, his eyes locked on the display case at the back. A Neuralink upgrade, top of the line, worth more than he makes in a month. The kind of thing he'd never be able to afford. Not normally. He grabs a fire extinguisher from the wall. The clerk's smile falters. Sir, you can't. Mike swings. The display case shatters. Alarms should blare. Security should swarm. The clerk should be screaming. But the clerk just stands there frozen, his mouth open in a silent O. Mike reaches in and plucks the Neuralink from the wreckage. It's warm in his hand, humming faintly. He turns to the clerk, who hasn't moved, who hasn't breathed, and grins. Thanks. He walks out. No one stops him. The apartment is a high-end unit in the corporate district, the kind of place Mike could never afford. But the access codes were easy to find, buried in OmniSoft's employee database, labeled under some mid-level executive's name. He let himself in like he belonged there. The place is all glass and steel, the kind of sterile luxury that makes Mike's stomach twist. He drops the stolen Neuralink onto the coffee table and flops onto the couch, kicking his feet up. The city sprawls below him, a grid of neon and rain. He orders everything. Synthetic caviar. Black market stims. A bottle of whiskey that costs more than his rent. The delivery drones arrive within minutes, their packages sliding through the apartment's secure chute like offerings to a god. He doesn't taste the caviar. He doesn't feel the burn of the whiskey. He just watches, his fingers tapping against the armrest, his mind racing. This isn't real. None of it is. He takes the stims anyway. The loop resets at 7:00 a.m. Mike wakes up to the alarm, to the thwack of windshield wipers, to the glow of the Time Is Yours billboard. His body aches not from the stims, they're gone, erased, not from the whiskey, his bloodstream is clean, but from the knowledge. He sits up slowly, his Neuralink already pinging with the day's schedule. Omnisoft 8:30 a.m. Project Sync meeting. Do not be late. He stares at it. Then he laughs. It's real. The loop is real. And it's his. He swings his legs over the edge of the bed, his bare feet pressing into the cold floor. The city hums outside, indifferent. The billboard flickers, its slogan pulsing like a heartbeat. Time is yours. Mike smirks. No, he thinks. Time is mine. The Omnisoft lobby was a tomb of polished marble and sterile efficiency, but today it felt different. Mike stepped through the automatic doors, the scent of burnt coffee and antiseptic sharp in his nostrils, but beneath it something else lingered, something electric, like the hum of a live wire. His Neuralink pulsed faintly against his temple, a reminder of the power he now wielded. The power to break things. He didn't bother with the coffee shop. Alina's blue hair would still be there tomorrow, her smile still too bright, her fingers still tapping that same impatient rhythm. She was a script, a loop within the loop, and he was done playing by the rules. The office floor was a sea of gray cubicles, the air thick with the low drone of fluorescent lights and the occasional clatter of a keyboard. Mike weaved through the maze, his shoes silent against the polished floor. He didn't look at Leo. He didn't look at anyone. His eyes were fixed on the prize, Sarah Jenkins' office, its glass walls reflecting the sterile glow of the monitors inside. He didn't knock. Sarah was at her desk, her back to him, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard. The office was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every file perfectly aligned. Mike leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed, and waited. She didn't turn. Mike, if this is about the sync delay, IT's handling it. It's not about the sync delay, he said, his voice low. Sarah finally glanced over her shoulder, her expression already impatient. Then what? Mike didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sleek device, a Neuralink hacking module he'd borrowed from the black server. He tapped it against his wrist, and the office's internal comms system flickered to life on every screen in the building. Sarah's eyes narrowed. What are you? The first clip played before she could finish. It was grainy, pulled from a corporate retreat 2 years ago. Sarah drunk, her hair disheveled, her voice slurring as she clutched a microphone. You all think you're so perfect, don't you? But you're not. None of you are. You're just cogs. Little cogs in a machine that doesn't even care if you break. The clip cut to laughter, to someone, probably Arthur Vance, clapping slowly, his smile sharp as a blade. Well said, Sarah. Very poetic. The office fell silent. Mike watched from the doorway as every head in the cubicle farm turned toward Sarah's office. Faces paled. Mouths dropped open. Someone, Leo probably, let out a choked laugh before clapping a hand over his mouth. Sarah's face went white. The second clip played. This one was worse. A private message pulled from her Neuralink logs. Her voice was raw, broken. I don't know if I can do this anymore. The promotion was supposed to fix everything, but it didn't. I still wake up at 3 a.m. and I still cry in the bathroom because no one sees me. I'm just a number to them. A utility score, the message cut off abruptly, like she deleted it mid-sentence. Like she'd realized even then that the system was always watching. Sarah's hands trembled. She reached for her Neuralink, her fingers fumbling as she tried to disconnect the feed. But it was too late. The damage was done. Mike stepped into the office, his shoes clicking against the floor. Sarah whirled on him, her eyes wild. What the hell is wrong with you? He tilted his head, studying her. Nothing. That's the point. You hacked my personal logs." Her voice was a whisper, a razor's edge of fury and something else. Something fragile. Mike smirked. "I did. And you know what? It was easier than I thought." Sarah's breath hitched. For a second he thought she might scream. Might lunge at him. Might do something. But she didn't. She just stood there, her chest rising and falling too fast, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Why?" she managed. Mike shrugged. "Because I can." The office outside was in chaos now. Chairs rolled back. Voices rose in a cacophony of shock and laughter. Someone, probably HR, was already on their way, their footsteps sharp against the floor. But Mike didn't care. He turned to leave, pausing in the doorway. "Oh, and Sarah," he said, glancing back at her. "You should really work on your poker face. It's pathetic." He didn't wait for her response. The rest of the day was a blur of exhilaration. Mike spent the afternoon in the break room, watching the fallout unfold on the office's internal feeds. Sarah had locked herself in her office, the blinds drawn, the door sealed. Rumors spread like wildfire. "Did you see the clip? Did you hear what she said? Who the hell is Mike?" But no one approached him. No one dared. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, and watched the world burn. It was glorious. The city at dusk was a monster of neon and rain, its streets slick with reflected light. Mike stood on the rooftop garden of his borrowed apartment, the wind tugging at his rumpled dress shirt, the city sprawled beneath him like a circuit board. "The time is yours" billboard pulsed in the distance, its slogan a mocking reminder of the power he now held. He pulled up the black server. The interface was a void, a digital abyss where data persisted across resets. He'd found it by accident buried in the Omnisoft mainframe, a glitch in the Great Sync, a place where the loop's rules didn't apply. He'd tested it at first, uploading small files, waiting to see if they'd vanish at 7:00 a.m. They hadn't. Now it was his trophy room. He pulled up the recording of Sarah's breakdown, the raw, unfiltered version, not the edited clips he'd broadcast. Her voice was a broken thing, her face a mask of shattered pride. He labeled the file carefully, day 1, the first crack. He saved it. The city hummed below him, indifferent. The rain fell in silver sheets, turning the neon signs into smears of color. Mike leaned against the railing, the cold metal biting into his palms. He felt alive. For the first time in years, he felt something. The loop wasn't a prison. It was a playground. And he was its god. He closed his eyes, tilting his face toward the sky. The rain hit his skin, cold and sharp like the edge of a knife. Tomorrow he thought he'd do something worse. The clock on his Neuralink read 6:59 a.m. In 1 minute the world would reset. But for Mike, the real day was just beginning. Chapter 2: Quality Assurance. The alarm blared at 7:00 a.m., but Mike didn't move. He lay on his back, staring at the water-stained ceiling of his studio apartment, fingers steepled over his chest like a man in prayer, though Mike hadn't prayed since he was 8, when he'd realized no one was listening. The neural link on his wrist hummed, its interface flickering with a new notification. Black server access, 98.7% stability. Data retention confirmed. He exhaled through his nose, a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. The loop wasn't just a glitch anymore. It was a tool. Mike rolled out of bed, the cold floor biting at his bare feet. His apartment was a mess of half-empty OptiMeal containers and crumpled printouts, security schematics, employee dossiers, a red Sharpie circle around Sarah Jenkins' name. He ignored the chaos, pulling on a fresh shirt, no rumples today, and adjusting his Neuralink. The interface flickered again, this time displaying a blank spreadsheet template. He tapped it open, the grid expanding across his vision like a promise. Variables. That's what this was. Not a prison. Not a playground. A system. Mike stepped out onto the balcony. The city sprawled beneath him in a grid of neon and concrete. "The time is yours" billboard pulsed across the street, its slogan glaring down at him like a challenge. He smirked. Time wasn't his. Not yet. But the rules were. He pulled up the black server, its interface a sleek, dark void waiting to be filled. He labeled a new file, Neo-Viridian Operational Map V1. Loop 1, the grid. Mike didn't go to work. Instead, he spent the day mapping. He started with the physical. Omnisoft security was a joke. Biometric scanners with a 0.8-second delay between authentication and door release, camera blind spots in the executive floor stairwells, the monorail security patrols running on a 12-minute cycle like clockwork. He tested each variable, timing his movements with the precision of a surgeon. By noon, he had the building's security layout memorized. Then came the human variables. Leo was easy. The man's routine was as predictable as the monorail. 3:17 p.m. bathroom break, always the same stall, always the same groan as he adjusted his pants. Mike watched from the cubicle next to his, fingers tapping against his desk in a silent countdown. 3, 2, 1. Leo stood, stretched, and shuffled toward the restroom. Mike followed, slipping into the stall beside him. He didn't need to do anything. Not yet. He just listened. "Fucking Jenkins," Leo muttered, the sound of a zipper cutting through the silence. Like she owns the place. Like any of this matters. Mike smiled. It didn't matter. Not to Leo. Not to any of them. He moved on to Sarah. Her routine was tighter but not impenetrable. 4:42 p.m. neural stim session, always in the same private pod, always with the same settings. Stress relief, level 3, 12-minute duration. Mike hacked into the pod's interface during lunch, cross-referencing her neural activity with her schedule. She wasn't just relieving stress. She was hiding. He saved the data to the black server, labeling it Sarah Jenkins Routine Analysis, V1. By the end of the day, the spreadsheet was half filled. Physical variables checked. Human variables in progress. He leaned back in his chair, watching the office hum around him like a machine. No one noticed him. No one ever did. The loop reset at 7:00 a.m. Loop 2, the exploits. Mike went to work this time. He needed access. HR was a fortress of red tape and biometric locks, but Leo's access keys, borrowed during his 3:17 p.m. break, got him in. The employee database was a goldmine. He cross-referenced security logs with personal schedules, mapping out the weak points in Omnisoft's armor. The IT department server room had a 45-second gap in its surveillance feed every hour. The executive floor's biometric scanner could be bypassed with a 0.3-second delay if you knew the exact timing of the guard's patrol. He saved it all. Neo-Viridian Operational Map, V1 grew thicker, its cells filling with data like a living thing. Then he turned to the digital. The black server was more than just a storage device. It was a mirror. A place where data persisted even when the loop reset. Mike tested its limits, uploading fragments of code, employee files, even a recording of his own voice whispering, "This is a test." The next morning, it was still there. He grinned. The loop wasn't just a reset. It was a backup. Loop 3, the first cut. Mike was ready. He started small. Leo's Neuralink was child's play to hack. A few lines of code, a planted file labeled illegal stim download V2, and by 2:47 p.m., IT was dragging Leo out of the office, his face red with humiliation. Mike watched from his cubicle, fingers steepled, counting the seconds until Leo's breakdown. 3, 2, 1. "Please, I didn't," Leo's voice cracked. "I swear I didn't download anything." Mike recorded it. The black server accepted the file with a quiet ping. He labeled it Leo Breakdown 001. The next morning, Leo was back at his desk, oblivious. Mike greeted him with a nod as if nothing had happened. "Rough day yesterday?" Mike asked, already knowing the answer. Leo blinked. "What? No, why?" Mike didn't reply. He pulled up the black server, scrolling through his trophies. One file. One broken man. It wasn't enough. Loop 7, the executive. The void was a den of synthetic pleasures, its air thick with the scent of ozone and expensive stims. Mike found Executive X's real name, Dr. Elena Voss, at the bar, her dyed blue hair glowing under the club's blacklights. She was mid-level, ambitious, and desperate to climb. Perfect. He bought her a drink. Then another. By the third, she was leaning in, her voice low. "You're not like the others," she murmured. "You actually listen." Mike smiled. He did listen. He listened to the way her breath hitched when she talked about the board's embezzlement scheme. He listened to the way her fingers trembled when she admitted she'd faked her utility score to get the promotion. He recorded it all. The next morning, he leaked the audio to her husband. By noon, Executive X had quit OmniSoft. Mike saved the file as Executive X Blackmail 001. He leaned back in his chair, the black server's interface glowing in his vision. His trophy room was growing. Leo Breakdown 001. Executive X Blackmail 001. And at the top of the list, Untouched, Untamed. Sarah Jenkins Expert. Mike tapped his fingers against his desk, counting the seconds until the next loop. The game was just getting started. Loop 12, the mirror. Mike adjusted his tie in the reflection of OmniSoft's glass elevator, watching the numbers climb toward the executive floor. Sarah Jenkins' office was on the 47th, a corner suite with a view of the city's neon arteries. He had spent the last 5 loops studying her, her coffee order black, no sugar, delivered at 9:17 a.m. sharp, her Neuralink's productivity settings optimized for analytical tasks between 10:00 a.m. and 2:30 p.m., the way she tapped her fingers against her desk when she was frustrated. He knew her better than she knew herself. The elevator dinged. Mike stepped out, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. Sarah's assistant, a gaunt man with a utility score tattooed on his wrist, barely glanced up from his terminal. "She's in a meeting," he said, voice flat. Mike didn't slow down. "She'll want this." He knocked once, then pushed open the door to Sarah's office. She was mid-sentence, standing in front of a holographic projection of OmniSoft's Q3 projections. 3 executives in sleek black suits turned to stare at him. Sarah's eyes flickered with irritation, then recognition. "Mike," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "This isn't a good time." Mike held up the coffee. "You missed your 9:17 a.m. delivery. Thought you might need it." A beat of silence. Sarah's Neuralink flickered at her temple, processing the anomaly. She never missed her coffee. The executives exchanged glances. One of them, a woman with silver-streaked hair, smirked. "Efficient of you, Henderson." Sarah took the cup, her fingers brushing against his. A static shock. Mike didn't flinch. "Thanks," she said, but her voice was tight. She turned back to the projection. "As I was saying." Mike didn't leave. He pulled up a chair, pulled out his Neuralink, and synced it with the hologram. "Actually, I think there's a miscalculation in the synergy metrics for Sector 7. The data's lagging by 0.3 seconds. He tapped the screen and the numbers shifted, realigning. The executives leaned in. Sarah's breath hitched. "How did you?" she started. Mike didn't look at her. "I ran the numbers last night. Thought you might want to see them before the board meeting." The silver-haired executive clapped her hands. "Well, looks like we've got a problem solved." She shot Sarah a look. "Maybe you should keep this one around." Sarah's smile was razor-thin. "Noted." The meeting ended 20 minutes later. The executives filed out, murmuring about proactive thinking and initiative. Sarah didn't move. She stood in front of the hologram, her back to Mike, her shoulders rigid. What the hell was that? She asked, her voice low. Mike leaned back in his chair. I fixed your presentation. You hacked my Neuralink. I optimized your data. She turned. Her eyes were sharp, searching. Why? Mike met her gaze. Because you're good at what you do. And good people deserve a little help. Sarah's Neuralink flickered again. A notification flashed across her vision. Utility score +2. Efficiency bonus acknowledged. She blinked. You're full of shit. Mike stood, smoothing his tie. See you at 2:30 p.m. I'll bring the Opti meal you like, the one with the extra protein synth. He left before she could respond. Loop 13, the pattern. Sarah was waiting for him at 2:30 p.m. Mike arrived with the Opti meal, a sleek black box with the OmniSoft logo embossed in silver. He set it on her desk. She didn't touch it. You're creeping me out, she said. Mike popped the seal on his own meal. Just being a good teammate. Teammates don't memorize each other's Neuralink settings. Teammates don't get +2 utility score bumps for fixing each other's mistakes. Sarah's fingers twitched. She pulled up her Neuralink interface, scrolling through her activity log. Mike had been there, subtle adjustments, optimizations, even a few accidental overlaps where his work had directly improved hers. It was too perfect. Too helpful. What do you want? She asked. Mike took a bite of his meal. Nothing. Just doing my job. Sarah didn't believe him. But she didn't argue. She ate her Opti meal in silence, her Neuralink humming as it processed the protein synth. Mike watched her from the corner of his eye, counting the seconds until her next question. 3, 2, 1. How did you know about the Sector 7 lag? She asked. Mike smiled. I pay attention. Loop 14, the crack. Sarah started expecting him. By loop 14, she had stopped questioning his presence. He was there at 9:17 a.m. with coffee, at 2:30 p.m. with Opti meals, at 4:42 p.m. when her neural stim pod hummed to life. He anticipated her needs before she voiced them. He fixed problems before she noticed them. He was useful. And it was driving her insane. You're not real, she said on loop 15, her voice barely above a whisper. They were in the neural stim pod, the dim blue light casting shadows under her eyes. Mike had hacked the pod's settings again, this time adjusting the stress relief algorithm to sync with her cortisol levels. She had never felt so seen. Mike didn't look at her. What do you mean? This, she gestured between them. You're not real. You're too, she trailed off, searching for the word. Efficient, Mike suggested. Perfect. Mike finally turned to her. The pod's light reflected in his eyes, making them glow. Nobody's perfect, Sarah. She swallowed. Then what are you? Mike reached out, his fingers brushing against the Neuralink at her temple. She didn't pull away. I'm the guy who's going to make sure you get that promotion. Sarah's breath hitched. Her utility score had been climbing steadily, +5 points in 3 loops. The executive floor was within reach. She should have been thrilled. Instead, she felt like she was drowning. Loop 16, the inversion. Mike didn't show up at 9:17 a.m. Sarah waited. She checked her Neuralink. No messages. No coffee. No Mike. By 10:00 a.m. she was irritated. By 11:00 a.m. she was worried. By noon she was furious. She stormed into the open plan office, her heels clicking against the floor. Leo looked up from his terminal, his eyes wide. Have you seen Henderson? Leo shook his head. Not since yesterday. Sarah's Neuralink pinged. A notification from HR, performance review update, Sarah Jenkins. Efficiency metrics below threshold. Z attached. She pulled up the file. Her stomach dropped. The review was brutal. Lack of proactive initiative, reliance on junior staff, failure to meet synergy targets. The words blurred in front of her. Her utility score had dropped by 8 points overnight. She whirled around. Who the fuck did this? The office was silent. Loop 17, the sabotage. Sarah's presentation was at 3:00 p.m. Mike arrived at 2:58 p.m., sliding into the conference room just as she was setting up the hologram. She didn't look at him. You're late. Traffic, Mike said, pulling out his Neuralink. You got the update from HR. Sarah's jaw tightened. Yes. Bullshit, right? She didn't answer. Mike leaned in. I can fix it. Sarah's fingers hovered over the hologram controls. How? Trust me. She hesitated. Then she nodded. Mike synced his Neuralink with the projector. The hologram flickered, then glitched. The numbers distorted, the graphs twisting into gibberish. The executives in the room murmured. Sarah's face paled. What though? She started. Mike didn't move. Oops. The hologram died. Silence. Then the silver-haired executive from Loop 12 sighed. Jenkins, this is unacceptable. Sarah's hands trembled. I don't know what happened. The data was fine this morning. Mike stood. I'll run a diagnostic. He didn't run a diagnostic. By the end of the day, Sarah's utility score had dropped another 4 points. The executives were whispering about incompetence. The assistant with the utility score tattoo shot her a pitying look. Sarah locked herself in the bathroom stall, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. Her Neuralink flickered, displaying a distorted message. You are being watched. She screamed. Loop 19, the fracture. Sarah didn't go to work on Loop 19. Mike found her in the neural stim pod at 4:42 p.m., her eyes red-rimmed, her hair tangled. She had been crying. The pod's interface was glitching, the stress relief algorithm stuck in a loop of static. Mike sat beside her. Rough day. Sarah didn't look at him. Fuck you. Mike pulled up his Neuralink. I brought you something. He played the recording. It was Sarah's voice, slurred and raw, from a corporate retreat 2 years ago. I hate this place. I hate them. They don't see me. They just see the score. Sarah's breath hitched. Where did you? Mike leaned in. I know everything, Sarah. Her Neuralink glitched again. You are being watched. She screamed. She screamed. Mike recorded it. The rooftop. Mike stood on the rooftop garden of Neo Veridian's tallest skyscraper. The city sprawled beneath him like a circuit board. The air smelled like ozone and rain. His Neuralink hummed, displaying the black server's interface. 47 files. 12 broken lives. Sarah's unraveling. He scrolled through the trophies. Leo Breakdown 001. Executive X Blackmail 001. Sarah Jenkins Fracture 003. It was all the same. He deleted the entire trophy room. A second later, the files restored themselves from a backup. Mike laughed. It was a hollow sound, echoing off the glass walls of the garden. Even his self-destruction was reversible. He pulled up the black server's log. The last entry glitched. User Sarah Jenkins. Action Memory Retention Test. Status failed, persistence detected. Mike frowned. He dismissed it. Below him, the time is yours billboard flickered. For a second, the slogan changed. Time SUP. Mike blinked. The billboard reset. He looked up. The Omnisoft penthouse glowed above him, a beacon of power. Arthur Vance's domain. Mike smirked. He had a new target. The loop reset at 7:00 a.m. He had 12 hours to break a god. Loop 20, the penthouse protocol. Mike didn't sleep. Not that it mattered. The loop would reset at 7:00 a.m. regardless, wiping away the dark circles under his eyes, the static hum of caffeine in his veins. But tonight he needed the edge. The clarity. The city outside his apartment window pulsed with its usual sterile rhythm, but Mike saw it differently now. Not as a prison, not as a playground, as a system to be dismantled. He pulled up the black server, its interface a sleek void waiting to be filled. A new folder pulsed at the top of the directory, Arthur Vance Project V1. He tapped it open, the grid expanding like a promise. Phase 1 Reconnaissance. Omnisoft's penthouse was a fortress. Not just physically, culturally. Arthur Vance wasn't just a CEO. He was a god. His name was etched into the city's infrastructure like a commandment. Vance SYSDMS. Vance Initiative. Vance the future synchronized. The billboards, the Neuralink ads, even the goddamn monorail announcements, all of it whispered his name like a prayer. Mike smirked. Gods bled just like everyone else. He started with the physical. The penthouse security was a joke, if you knew where to look. Omnisoft's biometric scanners were state-of-the-art, but they had a flaw, a 0.3-second delay between authentication and door release. Mike had mapped it out in Loop 12, but he needed to test it under real conditions. He pulled up the building's blueprints, cross-referencing them with the guard rotations he'd memorized. The executive floor had 2 guards, both ex-military, both running on a 90-minute patrol cycle. Their neural links synced with the building's mainframe, but Mike had already hacked into the IT department's backdoor. A few lines of code and he could loop their feeds, buying himself a 45-second window. Enough time. He labeled a new file, Penthouse Security Exploit V1. Then came the digital. Vance's Neuralink was a closed system, but nothing was truly air-gapped. Mike had spent Loop 18 mapping the Omnisoft mainframe's vulnerabilities, and he'd found a backdoor in the corporate sync protocol, a relic from the great sync glitch that had created the loop in the first place. The same glitch that had broken reality for Mike had left a scar in the system. A weakness. He exploited it. By 3:00 a.m., he had a live feed of Vance's Neuralink activity. The man was a machine. 6:00 p.m. Whiskey. 6:30 p.m. Neuralink meditation. 7:45 p.m. Bed. No deviations. No surprises. Just the rigid, unbreakable routine of a man who had never been told no. Mike saved the data. Vance Routine Analysis V1. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. twAIn. Then he remembered the blackmail. Vance's board members were a den of vipers, but they were his vipers. Mike had spent Loop 15 compiling their secrets, embezzlement, affairs, a cover-up involving a great sync anomaly that had wiped out an entire sector of the city. The files were encrypted, but the black server had no trouble cracking them. He scrolled through the data, his lips curling. Board member X embezzlement. $12 million. Hidden in offshore neural stims. Board member Y affair with Vance's daughter. Recorded in a private pod. Blackmail material attached. Board member Z cover-up of the Great Sync glitch. 47 deaths. Buried in Omnisoft's mainframe. Mike labeled the folder, Vance Blackmail Archive V1. He sent the first thread at 4:00 a.m. A single line, anonymous, delivered straight to Vance's Neuralink. I know about Sector 7. He waited. No response. Mike smirked. Of course not. Vance didn't answer to threats. He was the threat. He sent another at 5:00 a.m. I know about the glitch. Still nothing. Mike leaned forward, his reflection flickering in the dark screen of his Neuralink. Vance wasn't just untouchable. He was above touch. A man who had spent 50 years building a world where the rules bent to his will. A man who thought he was a god. Mike's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He pulled up the black server, scrolling to the Vance Blackmail archive. He selected board member Z, cover-up of the Great Sync glitch, and attached a single file, a distorted audio recording of a board meeting from 20 years ago. Vance's voice younger but just as cold. The glitch is contained. The sector is a write-off. No one will remember. Mike sent it. He set a timer on his Neuralink, 72 hours until execution. The loop reset at 7:00 a.m. Loop 21, the test. Mike didn't go to work. He went to the penthouse. The monorail ride was smooth, the city a blur of neon and concrete outside the window. He stepped off at the Omni Soft Tower, the glass monolith looming over him like a tombstone. The guards at the executive floor didn't even glance at him. Their neural links were still looping the same 45-second feed from the night before. twAIn. The penthouse door was unlocked. Mike stepped inside, the marble floor cold beneath his feet. The air smelled like whiskey and ozone, the scent of a man who had never known failure. He pulled up his Neuralink, the interface casting a blue glow over the room. Vance's desk was a monument to power. Holographic trophies, a wall of utility score achievements, a Neuralink charging station shaped like a throne. Mike ran his fingers over the surface, leaving no prints. No consequences. He pulled up the black server, scrolling to Vance Routine Analysis V1. 6:00 p.m. Whiskey. He opened the liquor cabinet. A bottle of Vance Reserve, aged 50 years. He poured himself a glass, the amber liquid catching the light. Not bad. He set the glass down untouched. 6:30 p.m. Neuralink meditation. Mike pulled up the meditation pod's interface. It was a sleek black capsule, humming softly in the corner of the room. He hacked into its settings, adjusting the neural frequencies to match Vance's personal profile. The pod whirred to life, the interior lighting shifting to a deep, rhythmic pulse. Mike stepped inside. The pod sealed shut. The world dissolved into static. He didn't meditate. He recorded. Vance's Neuralink synced with the pod automatically. Mike siphoned the data, memories, thoughts, the raw, unfiltered essence of a man who had spent a lifetime believing he was untouchable. He saved it to the black server. Vance Neural Dump 001. The pod opened. Mike stepped out, his reflection flickering in the glass. He pulled up his Neuralink. The countdown pulsed in the corner of his vision, 71 hours until execution. He labeled a new file, Arthur Vance Project V2. Loop 22, the reflection. Mike stood in the penthouse elevator, the doors reflecting his smirk. Below him, the city pulsed like a living thing, but he knew it wasn't alive. It was a machine. And he was the only one who could see the gears. His Neuralink pinged. A notification from the black server. User Arthur Vance. Action Neuralink access detected. Status unauthorized. Alert sent to security. Mike dismissed it. The elevator doors opened. The penthouse was empty. Mike stepped inside, the marble floor cold beneath his feet. He pulled up the black server, scrolling to Vance Neural Dump 001. He played the recording. Vance's voice smooth and confident. The system is stable. The glitch is contained. No one will remember. Mike smirked. Wrong. He pulled up the Time is Yours billboard feed. The slogan pulsed across the street, glaring down at him like a challenge. Time is yours. Mike tapped his fingers against his Neuralink, counting the seconds. 3, 2, 1. The billboard flickered. For a second the slogan changed. Time SUP. Mike blinked. The billboard reset. He shook his head. Paranoia. His Neuralink glitched. A distorted message flashed across his vision. Error memory corruption detected. Source unknown. The screen cleared. Mike frowned. He pulled up the black server's log. A single unexplained entry. User Sarah Jenkins. Action memory retention test. Status failed, persistence detected. Mike didn't see it. The loop reset at 7:00 a.m. He had 72 hours to break a god. The elevator doors closed behind him. The city held its breath. Chapter 3: The Manager's Script. Loop 3: The First Crack. The alarm blared at 7:00 a.m., but Mike didn't move. He lay on his back, staring at the water-stained ceiling of his studio apartment, fingers tapping out a rhythm against his thigh. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The windshield wipers outside kept time, a metronome for the city's endless loop. He exhaled, watching his breath fog the cold air. Today was the day he'd start breaking Sarah Jenkins. He dressed in his usual rumpled business casual charcoal slacks, a slightly wrinkled button-down, the same scuffed loafers he'd worn for the past 37 Tuesdays. The neural link on his wrist hummed as he synced it to the black server, pulling up Sarah's employee dossier. Utility score 98.7. Peak efficiency. He smirked. That wouldn't last. The monorail was packed with the usual commuters, their faces blank, their neural links flickering with synchronized data streams. Mike leaned against the window, watching the city blur past, neon signs, rain-slicked streets, the occasional flicker of a glitching hologram. He tapped his fingers against the glass. 1, 2, 3. The train lurched to a stop. 4, 5. The doors hissed open. 6, 7. Omnisoft's lobby was a cavern of polished concrete and flickering fluorescence. The barista, Alina, stood behind the counter, her dyed blue hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She didn't smile when she saw him. Black coffee, no sugar, Mike said, sliding his wrist over the payment terminal. The machine beeped. Transaction approved. Utility score +01. He pocketed the receipt without looking at it. Sarah Jenkins was already at her desk when he arrived, her posture rigid, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard. Mike paused at the edge of her cubicle, watching the way her brow furrowed when she read an incoming message. Trigger interruptions during deep work. He filed the observation away. The stand-up meeting was at 9:17 a.m. Mike arrived early, taking a seat at the back of the conference room. Sarah stood at the front, her presentation already loaded onto the central display. Project Phoenix Phase 2. Mike's lips twitched. He reached for the coffee cup on the table in front of him, her coffee cup, and knocked it over. The liquid arced through the air in slow motion, a dark brown stain spreading across the presentation slides. Sarah's head snapped up. The room fell silent. Mike didn't move. He didn't apologize. He just watched as Sarah's utility score ticked down on the corner of his Neuralink display. 98.7 right arrow 98.4. Shit, Sarah muttered, wiping at the screen with the sleeve of her blazer. The ink smudged, distorting the graphs. Mike leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Trigger public humiliation. Recovery time 47 minutes. He set a timer on his Neuralink. By 10:04 a.m., Sarah's score had stabilized. She didn't look at him as she passed his desk, but her jaw was set, her steps sharp. Mike pulled up the black server and logged the data. Sarah Jenkins Humiliation Test 001. Duration 53 minutes. Emotional spike detected at 9:22 a.m. Frustration. Plateau at 9:45 a.m. Resignation. He labeled the file and moved on. Loop 7: The Praise Paradox Test. Sarah was different today. Or rather, he was different. He arrived at her desk at 8:42 a.m., a fresh cup of coffee in hand. You look like you could use this, he said, setting it down beside her keyboard. She blinked up at him, her expression unreadable. Thanks, Mike. He didn't leave. Instead, he pulled up a chair and leaned in, pointing at the code on her screen. That's a clever workaround for the sync delay, he said. I didn't think of that. Sarah's shoulders relaxed infinitesimally. It's not perfect. The latency still spikes at 3:17 p.m. Let me take a look. Mike reached for her Neuralink, his fingers brushing against hers as he synced his device to hers. She didn't pull away. He spent the next 20 minutes optimizing her algorithm, his voice low, his praise specific. "You're the only one who's noticed that. That's brilliant, Sarah. You should present this at the quarterly review." By noon, her utility score had climbed to 99.1. She was smiling. Then he leaked the fake performance review. It was easy. A few keystrokes, a forged digital signature, and Sarah Jenkins, subpar team leadership. Recommend demotion to Tier 2 was sitting in HR's inbox by 1:30 p.m. Mike watched from his desk as Sarah's Neuralink pinged with an urgent message. Her face paled. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "What the hell?" Mike didn't look up from his screen. "Everything okay?" She didn't answer. She stormed toward HR, her heels clicking against the concrete. Mike pulled up the security feed, watching as she argued with the department head, her hands gesturing wildly. Her score dropped. 99.1, right arrow 91.4. He labeled the file, Sarah Jenkins Praise Paradox Test 001. Baseline score 98.7. Post-praise 99.1. Post-sabotage 91.4. Emotional volatility confirmed. Sarah didn't speak to him for the rest of the day. Loop 12, the impossible calendar. Mike hacked her Neuralink at 7:03 a.m. It was child's play. A backdoor in OmniSoft's sync protocol, a few lines of code, and suddenly Sarah's calendar was his playground. He scheduled meetings in impossible locations. Conference room 14B does not exist at 9:15 a.m. Client demo in Sector 7, restricted access at 11:30 a.m. Emergency sync review in the rooftop garden, weather lockdown at 2:00 p.m. He watched from his desk as Sarah's Neuralink buzzed with notifications. She frowned, tapping at the air. "What the?" She stood, grabbing her coat. "I've got a meeting in Sector 7. Mike didn't move. He pulled up the security feeds, tracking her as she sprinted through the office, her breath coming in short gasps. 9:17 a.m. Arrives at non-existent conference room 14B. Confusion detected. He recorded the audio log, Sarah Jenkins Panic 001. Breathing rate 28 BPM. Voice strain 0.8. By 11:45 a.m. she was sweating. Her hair had come loose from its bun, her blouse clinging to her back. She stood in the middle of the lobby, her Neuralink flickering with errors. Error location not found. Please recalibrate. Mike sipped his coffee. Perfect. At 2:00 p.m. she was on the rooftop, her hands braced against the railing, her chest heaving. The city sprawled beneath her, a grid of neon and concrete. Mike approached silently, his shoes making no sound on the wet gravel. "You look like you've had a day." Sarah whirled around, her eyes wild. "What the fuck is going on?" Mike tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "My calendar, it's all wrong. None of these meetings exist. I've been running around like an idiot for hours." Mike feigned concern. "That's weird. Maybe it's a sync glitch." Sarah's hands trembled. "A glitch? Mike, I just spent the morning chasing ghosts." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You should report it to it." She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "It? You think they don't know about this?" Mike didn't answer. He just watched as she pressed her palms to her eyes, her breath hitching. Audio log, Sarah Jenkins Panic 001. Duration 12 minutes. Emotional breakdown detected. When she lowered her hands, her eyes were red. "Why are you here, Mike?" He smiled. "Just making sure you're okay." She didn't believe him. But she didn't argue. The Sarah Jenkins Psychological Profile, version 1 baseline. Mike compiled the data in the black server at 3:47 a.m., the glow of the terminal casting long shadows across his apartment. The city outside was silent, the rain a steady hiss against the window. Subject Sarah Jenkins. Utility score baseline 98.7. Emotional triggers. Public humiliation, score drop of 0.3 points. Recovery time 47 minutes. Praise paradox, score spike to 99.1, followed by crash to 91.4. Emotional volatility confirmed. Impossible tasks induces panic, breathing rate 28 bpm, disorientation and paranoia. Subject exhibits signs of cognitive dissonance. Weaknesses. Over-reliance on utility score for self-worth. Need for control, rigid routines, stress relief pods at 4:42 p.m. Vulnerability to gaslighting, distrust of own perception post-glitches. Recommendations for further testing. Alternate between ally and antagonist roles to fracture subject's sense of reality. Introduce external threats, e.g., anonymous messages, staged humiliations, to accelerate psychological unraveling. Monitor Neuralink glitches for signs of memory persistence. Mike saved the file and leaned back in his chair. The black server terminal flickered, the display distorting for a fraction of a second. A message flashed across the screen. Memory overwrite detected. Source unknown. He frowned. That wasn't supposed to happen. He refreshed the terminal. The message was gone. Mike dismissed it. Just another glitch. He labeled the file Sarah Jenkins profile, V1, and closed the terminal. Outside, the time is yours billboard flickered. For a second, the slogan changed. Time is up. Then it reset. Mike didn't see it. Loop 81, the honeypot. The alarm blared at 7:00 a.m., but Mike didn't move. He lay on his back staring at the water-stained ceiling, fingers tapping against his thigh in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The windshield wipers outside kept time, a metronome for the city's endless loop. Today was the day he would break Sarah Jenkins. He dressed carefully, no wrinkles, no scuffs. A fresh shirt, a sharp crease in his slacks. He synced his Neuralink to the black server, pulling up Sarah's dossier. Utility score 98.7. Peak efficiency. He smirked. Not for long. The monorail was packed, but Mike didn't notice the commuters. His focus was on the security feeds streaming across his Neuralink, Sarah's apartment, her office, the rooftop garden where she sometimes went to clear her head. He had mapped her entire day down to the second. By the time he arrived at OmniSoft, he knew exactly what she needed before she did. Sarah was already at her desk, her posture rigid, her fingers flying over the holographic keyboard. Mike paused at the edge of her cubicle, watching the way her brow furrowed when she read an incoming message. Trigger interruptions during deep work. He filed the observation away. Morning, Sarah, he said, setting a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, exactly how she liked it, beside her keyboard. She blinked up at him, her expression unreadable. You look like you could use this. She hesitated, then reached for the cup. Thanks, Mike. He didn't leave. Instead, he pulled up a chair and leaned in, pointing at the code on her screen. That's a clever workaround for the sync delay, he said. I didn't think of that. Sarah's shoulders relaxed infinitesimally. It's not perfect. The latency still spikes at 3:17 p.m. Let me take a look. Mike reached for her Neuralink, his fingers brushing against hers as he synced his device to hers. She didn't pull away. He spent the next 20 minutes optimizing her algorithm, his voice low, his praise specific. You're the only one who's noticed that. That's brilliant, Sarah. You should present this at the quarterly review. By noon, her utility score had climbed to 99.1. She was smiling. 12:00 p.m. 4:00 p.m. The sabotage. Mike waited until 12:17 p.m. Sarah was in a meeting with the project leads, her presentation loaded onto the central display. He pulled up the HR interface on his Neuralink and forged a performance review. Sarah Jenkins, subpar team leadership. Recommend demotion to Tier 2. He sent it. Sarah's Neuralink pinged at 12:30 p.m. She frowned, tapping the air. Her face paled. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. What the hell? Mike didn't look up from his screen. Everything okay? She didn't answer. She stormed toward HR, her heels clicking against the concrete. Mike pulled up the security feed, watching as she argued with the department head, her hands gesturing wildly. Her score dropped. 99.1 right arrow 91.4. She returned to her desk at 3:47 p.m., her eyes red. Mike, she said, her voice tight. Did you? He feigned confusion. Did I what? She exhaled sharply, pressing her palms to her eyes. Never mind. Mike labeled the file, Sarah Jenkins Sabotage Test 001. Score drop 7.7 points. Emotional state betrayal. 4:00 p.m. 6:00 p.m. The gaslight. At 4:12 p.m. Sarah's Neuralink buzzed. A new message flashed across her vision. Remember the Great Sync cover-up. I have proof. She froze. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the air, pulling up the attachment. A distorted file labeled classified, VANCMBZZLMENT flickered into view. She deleted it. It reappeared. Mike watched from a security feed in the server room, sipping coffee. He labeled the file, Sarah Jenkins Gaslight Test 002. Memory persistence confirmed. 6:00 p.m. 9:00 p.m. The void. Mike sent her a message at 6:23 p.m. Meet me at the void. There's something you need to see. Sarah arrived at 6:45 p.m., her face pale, her hands clenched. The club was a cavern of neon and bass, the air thick with the scent of synth and sweat. Mike was waiting at the bar, a glass of whiskey in hand. What is this, Mike? She asked, her voice barely audible over the music. He didn't answer. Instead, he tapped his Neuralink. The screens around the club flickered. A file labeled Sarah Jenkins, Performance Review, Final Warning projected onto every surface. The music cut out. The crowd fell silent. Sarah's face went pale. What the? Mike sipped his whiskey. Looks like someone leaked your real utility score. The file scrolled. Sarah Jenkins, 89.3. Probation recommended. The crowd laughed. Sarah's hands trembled. You did this. Mike smiled. Prove it. 9:00 p.m. 12:00 a.m. The breaking point. Sarah didn't go home. Mike found her in her apartment at 11:30 p.m., curled on the floor, her Neuralink flickering with distorted audio logs. Her own voice echoed through the room. I don't know what's real anymore. Please just make it stop. Who the fuck are you? Mike crouched beside her. I want you to remember, he whispered. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes hollow. Remember what? The loop reset at 7:00 a.m. Loop 101, the hollow victory. Mike woke to the usual alarm, the usual drizzle. The time is yours, billboard flickered. For a second the slogan changed. Time is up. He ignored it. He pulled up the black server. Sarah's dossier was labeled completed. He should have felt triumphant. Instead he felt nothing. He accessed the security feeds from Loop 100. Sarah was back at her desk, her utility score at 98.7, no sign of the breakdown. But when she looked up, her eyes flickered with something new. Recognition. Mike's stomach twisted. He pulled up the black server logs. 3 files were missing. Sarah Jenkins Void Breakdown 001. Sarah Jenkins Paranoia 002. Sarah Jenkins Final Fracture 003. Someone had downloaded them. She had downloaded them. Mike's Neuralink glitched. A distorted message flashed across his vision. Error memory corruption detected. Source Sarah Jenkins. The screen cleared. Mike stared at his reflection in the black server terminal. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. He labeled a new file, Project Sarah Conclusion. He didn't know what to write. Outside, the "time is yours" billboard flickered again. Time is up. The loop reset. The city held its breath. Chapter 4: God of the Monoliths. The alarm blared at 7:00 a.m., a shrill electronic scream that cut through the silence of Mike's apartment like a scalpel. He didn't move. The windshield wipers outside thwacked in their relentless rhythm, thwack, 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 a metronome counting down the seconds of another Tuesday. The neon glow of the "Time is yours" billboard seeped through the blinds, casting jagged shadows across his face. For a moment it flickered. The slogan glitched, stuttering between "time is yours" and "time is up" before stabilizing. Mike ignored it. He always did. He pulled up the black server terminal, the screen casting a sickly blue glow over his angular features. The system hummed to life, displaying a new error: memory corruption, 12%. He dismissed it with a flick of his wrist. Today was the day he broke Arthur Vance. The man who never lost. The man who never could lose. Mike smirked, tapping his fingers in a countdown against the desk, 3, 2, 1 before his Neuralink pinged. A notification flashed. Sarah Jenkins has accessed 10 additional files from Loop 80. His stomach twisted. He pulled up the security feeds. Sarah was already at her desk, her eyes bloodshot, her fingers flying over her terminal. She wasn't just working. She was searching. For him. Mike exhaled through his nose. Let's give her a show. The Omnisoft server room was a tomb of flickering terminals and the hum of corrupted data. Mike moved through the aisles like a ghost, his footsteps swallowed by the white noise of the system. He didn't need to hack the black server, he owned it. The terminal recognized his biometrics with a quiet click, and the dossier he'd been compiling for weeks materialized on screen. Vance embezzlement 001047. Files proving Arthur Vance had siphoned billions from Omnisoft's utility score algorithm, funneling it into offshore Neuralink farms. Vance assassination 005. A recorded conversation from Loop 12, where Vance ordered the disappearance of a rival executive with the same clinical detachment Mike reserved for deleting old code. Vance glitch cover-up 009. Evidence that Vance had known about the Great Sync glitches, the citywide disasters that had left 47 people dead, and covered them up to maintain his own utility score. Mike labeled the dossier VANCTOMBSTONE and uploaded it to the black server. The files would persist through the reset. At 6:59 p.m., 1 minute before the loop's inevitable reboot, he'd leak them to the city's mainframe. Vance's downfall would be permanent. Let's see how godlike you feel when the city knows what you are, Mike muttered, his voice a razor's edge in the silence. The terminal glitched. A distorted image of Sarah from Loop 80 flickered onto the screen, her face twisted in terror, her mouth open in a silent scream. The error message flashed: memory corruption, 15%. Source: Sarah Jenkins. Mike's fingers curled into a fist. He slammed it against the terminal. Not today. The glitch persisted, the image of Sarah's broken face pulsing like a dying star. He forced himself to breathe. The loop was his. She was his. As he left the server room, he passed Leo, the IT guy, slumped in his chair, his stained I-code t-shirt clinging to his paunch. Leo didn't look up. Didn't greet him. Didn't even acknowledge his existence. Then without warning, Leo's head lifted. His bloodshot eyes locked onto Mike's. "You look like hell, man," he said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual nervous energy. Mike froze. Leo had never spoken to him like that before. Not in any loop. The IT guy's script was simple: "Hello, Mike. How's the code? Need any help?" Nothing more. Nothing less. But this was new. This was wrong. The city held its breath. Mike didn't have time to dwell on it. He had a god to dismantle. By 12:30 p.m., he was in the Void, the underground nightclub where Neo-Viridian's elite came to drown their utility scores in synth liquor and neural stim highs. The air was thick with the bass-heavy throb of music, the flicker of holographic dancers, the sharp tang of ozone and sweat. Mike didn't bother with the main floor. He slipped into the club's control room, his fingers dancing over the terminal. The Void security was a joke. A 0.8-second delay in the biometric scanners. A loop in the camera feeds every 12 minutes. Mike exploited both, overriding the club's Neuralink security protocols with a few keystrokes. The screens flickered to life, projecting Vance's blackmail files for all to see. Vance embezzlement 001. Vance assassination 005. Vance glitch cover-up 009. The elite panicked. A high-ranking executive, Executive X, Mike labeled him in his notes, stumbled back from the bar, his drink sloshing onto the floor. "What the hell is this?" he slurred, his voice drowning in the sudden chaos. The music cut out. The dancers froze mid-motion. The screens flashed red, the words utility score, 0 scrolling across Vance's face in a loop. Then the riot started. Glass shattered. Fists flew. A woman in a silver dress screamed as she was shoved into a table, her Neuralink glitching, displaying the same error Mike had seen in the server room: memory corruption, 20%. Mike watched from a security feed, sipping a synth coffee that tasted like burnt copper. "Let's see how the high and mighty handle a little exposure," he mused, his voice lost in the cacophony. Meanwhile, Sarah was piecing it together. She noticed the glitches first, the way her Neuralink flickered when she pulled up certain files, the way the city's lights dimmed for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Loop 80 UR being WATCHED scrolled across her terminal, the words burning into her retinas. She ignored it. She had to. Then she found VANC to ambiestioni. She didn't remember accessing the black server. Didn't remember the credentials she used to pull up the files. But there they were, staring back at her. Vance's embezzlement, his assassination orders, the Great Sync cover-up. Her hands shook. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. She pulled up the security feeds from the Void. Mike was there. He was leaning against the bar, a synth coffee in hand, watching the chaos unfold with the detached amusement of a man observing ants in a jar. She zoomed in on his face. He was smiling. Not the lopsided smirk he used in the office, not the polite curve of his lips when he was pretending to care. This was different. This was the smile of a man who had just won. She recognized it. Loop 80. The memory hit her like a physical blow. The rooftop. The rain. The way he had looked at her when he said, "I want you to remember." Her Neuralink glitched again, playing a distorted audio clip. "I want you to remember. I want you to remember." The screen cleared. The city's lights flickered. Zara's breath came in short, sharp gasps. "Who are you?" she whispered. She didn't get an answer. As she left her office, she bumped into Elena, the barista from the lobby coffee shop. Elena didn't smile. Didn't offer her the usual morning Sarah. Black coffee, no synth sweetener, right? Instead, she just stared, her bright blue hair a stark contrast to the pallor of her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Elena said, her voice quiet. Sarah froze. "Do I know you?" Elena's eyes flickered with something, recognition. "Pity." "You will," she replied. The city held its breath. And then the loop reset. But this time, something was different. Mike didn't notice at first. He was too busy watching the chaos unfold, too busy savoring the way the city bent to his will. But as he stepped out of the Void, the air felt heavier. The neon signs flickered. The monorails hummed with a low, distorted static. And for the first time, Mike Henderson felt the cold prickle of fear. Because the loop wasn't just glitching. It was remembering. The penthouse elevator ascended in silence, its polished metal walls reflecting Mike's gaunt face like a funhouse mirror. He adjusted the biometric spoof on his Neuralink, data stolen from Loop 42, when Vance had been drunk enough to leave his terminal unlocked for exactly 17 seconds. The spoof would hold for 90 seconds. Plenty of time. He expected the penthouse to be empty. Vance would be at the void by now, drowning in the chaos Mike had meticulously engineered. The riot should have kept him occupied for hours. But as the elevator doors slid open with a whisper, Mike's breath caught in his throat. The penthouse was alive with movement. Arthur Vance stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to Mike, his silhouette sharp against the city's neon glow. The screens embedded in the glass displayed security feeds from the void, flashing red, bodies colliding, the distorted faces of executives Mike had exposed. Vance's fingers twitched at his sides, his knuckles white. "Who the hell is doing this?" he snarled, his voice a low, resonant growl that carried across the open space. Mike froze. His Neuralink flickered a warning. The biometric spoof was holding, but the system was fighting it. He ducked behind a sleek black couch, his pulse hammering in his ears. Through the gap between the cushions, he watched Vance turn, his silver hair catching the light like a predator's pelt. The CEO's face was a mask of controlled fury, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, burned with something Mike hadn't seen before. Fear. Then the door to the penthouse hissed open. Sarah Jenkins stepped inside, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to an explosion. Her face was pale, her usual composure shattered. She clutched a Neuralink tablet in her hands, her fingers digging into the edges hard enough to leave crescent marks in the plastic. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice steady but strained, "we have a problem. The system is corrupted. The utility scores are resetting." Vance didn't turn. Didn't acknowledge her. His gaze remained fixed on the chaos unfolding in the void. "Explain," he said, his voice a blade. Sarah hesitated. Mike could see the conflict in the set of her shoulders, the way her breath hitched. She didn't remember how she knew. But she knew. "It's Mike Henderson," she said, the words tumbling out like a confession. She cut herself off, her throat working. The Neuralink tablet in her hands glitched, the screen flickering with distorted text. "Loop 80, you are being watched." Vance's terminal pinged. A message flashed across the glass, overlaying the security feeds. "Memory corruption 20%. Source Sarah Jenkins." The CEO's body went rigid. Slowly he turned. His eyes locked onto Sarah, then flicked to the terminal. "What did you say?" Mike's blood turned to ice. "She remembers." He stepped out from behind the couch, his movements deliberate, his expression carefully neutral. "Sarah," he said, his voice smooth, almost pleasant. "Fancy seeing you here." Sarah's head snapped toward him. Her eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, locked onto his face. And then, like a blade sliding between his ribs, she whispered, "I remember you." The penthouse lights flickered. A low, distorted hum filled the air, the kind of sound a dying machine makes when it's trying to scream. Vance's terminal glitched again, the security feeds freezing. A single image filled the screen, Mike from Loop 100. His face was twisted in triumph, his eyes alight with something feral as he watched Sarah collapse onto the rooftop, her body racked with sobs. The error message beneath it read, "Loop 100, you are the glitch." Vance's breath hissed between his teeth. "You," he growled, turning to Mike. The word was a curse, a promise. "You're the one behind this." Mike smirked. "Guilty." Vance lunged. Mike sidestepped, his body moving on instinct. His fingers flew over his Neuralink, triggering the final sequence, the one he'd spent the last 47 loops preparing. The blackout. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Outside, the city died. The neon signs of Neo-Viridian flickered once, twice, then went dark. The monorails screeched to a halt mid-transit, their brakes locking with a sound like 1,000 nails on glass. The time is yours billboard, Mike's personal nemesis, flickered one last time before plunging the skyline into blackness. Silence. Then from the darkness, Sarah's voice cut through the void like a scalpel. Mike, what did you do? Mike's Neuralink glitched. A distorted message flashed across his vision, the letters bleeding into the black. Error, loop integrity compromised. Source unknown. The screen cleared. The clock on his Neuralink read 6:59 p.m. 1 minute until reset. Mike's hands trembled. For the first time, he was afraid. The darkness was absolute. The kind of dark that pressed against your skin, that made your breath sound too loud in your own ears. Mike could hear Vance's ragged breathing, the shuffle of Sarah's feet against the marble floor. The city outside was a graveyard of dead lights, the only sound the distant, muffled shouts of panicked citizens. Then Vance spoke. His voice was a low, dangerous growl, the kind of sound a predator makes when it's cornered. You're going to pay for this. Mike laughed. He couldn't help it. The sound was sharp, brittle, echoing in the empty penthouse. With what? He said, turning toward the sound of Vance's voice. You can't touch me. The loop resets in 1 minute. A beat of silence. Then Sarah's voice, quiet but steady. No, she said. It doesn't. Mike froze. What? Sarah didn't answer. Instead, he heard the soft chime of her Neuralink activating. A file label glowed in the darkness, projected onto the air between them. Loop 80 recovery. She played it. Mike's voice filled the penthouse. Distorted. Glitching. But unmistakable. I want you to remember. The audio cut out. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Sarah exhaled. I do, she said. I remember everything. Vance's breath hitched. What the hell is she talking about? Mike's mind raced. This wasn't possible. The black server was supposed to be the only thing that persisted. The only thing. Unless. Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. The glitch is. The missing files. The way the city feels wrong. I thought I was losing my mind. But I'm not. You did this, she pointed at Mike, her finger a dagger in the dark. You've been resetting the world. And I'm the only one who remembers. Mike's Neuralink glitched again. This time the error message was different. Bigger. Brighter. Memory corruption 100%. Source Sarah twAIn. The screen cleared. The clock ticked to 6:59 p.m. Vance, sensing weakness, lunged. Mike sidestepped, but Sarah was there. She moved faster than he expected, her body a blur in the darkness. She stepped between them, her palm pressing against Vance's chest. No, she said, her voice low, dangerous. He's mine. Vance froze. The city held its breath. Then, the clock hit 7:00 a.m. The reset should have triggered. It didn't. The penthouse lights flickered back on, harsh and unnatural, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The city's billboards rebooted, their screens flickering to life. The monorails hummed, their engines whirring back online. But something was wrong. The time is yours billboard now read. Time is up. The error message on Mike's Neuralink flashed one last time. Loop termination failed. Cause memory persistence. Sarah stared at Mike. Her eyes were wide, her face pale. It didn't reset, she whispered. Mike's hands shook. For the first time, he understood. He wasn't the god of this loop anymore. He was just another glitch. The penthouse lights flickered back on with a sickly, artificial glow, casting long shadows that stretched like accusatory fingers across the marble floor. Mike's reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows was a stranger's, gaunt, hollow-eyed, the sharp angles of his face softened by something that looked suspiciously like fear. He reached up, pressing his palm against the glass. The city sprawled beneath him, a graveyard of dead lights flickering back to life one by one, like the slow, labored breaths of a dying machine. Elena was down there. She stood on the sidewalk below, her bright blue hair a neon smear against the pre-dawn gloom. Her head tilted back, her gaze locked onto the penthouse windows. She waved. Not the polite, scripted wave of a barista greeting a regular. Not the hollow, rehearsed motion of an NPC going through the motions. This was deliberate. Knowing. Mike's stomach twisted. The city's monorails hummed back to life, their engines whirring like the gears of a clock counting down to an execution. The air smelled wrong, ozone and burnt circuitry, the acrid tang of a system pushed beyond its limits. The citizens on the streets moved in jerky, unnatural motions, their limbs twitching like marionettes with cut strings. A man in a gray suit stumbled, his Neuralink glitching, displaying the same error Mike had seen in the server room: memory corruption, 18%. Source unknown. He didn't reset. Didn't blink. Just stood there, staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. Vance staggered back from his terminal, his face ashen. His Neuralink flickered, the holographic display above his wrist stuttering before stabilizing. The utility score he'd spent a lifetime cultivating, the number that defined his godhood, his invincibility, was gone. In its place, a single word pulsed in crimson. Glitch. Vance's breath came in ragged gasps. What have you done? His voice was a blade, but the edge was dulled by something Mike had never heard from him before: uncertainty. The CEO of Omnisoft, the man who had never lost, who had never feared, looked like a child who just realized the monsters under his bed were real. Mike didn't answer. He couldn't. His Neuralink pinged again, the notification flashing like a warning siren. Black server alert: 1,247 users have accessed Loop 80 files. The screen expanded, scrolling through a list of names. Leo. Elena. Executive X. Dozens more. Hundreds. All with the same error message stamped beneath their profiles. Memory persistence detected. Mike's fingers twitched. The file he'd labeled LOOPTERMINATION still hung open on his Neuralink, its cursor blinking like a metronome counting down to an explosion. He didn't know what to write. Didn't know how to write it. The words wouldn't come. The truth was too heavy, too wrong. Sarah stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble like a countdown. The city's billboards flickered in unison, their screens syncing up to display a single phrase in jagged, glitching letters. We remember. The words burned into Mike's retinas. His breath hitched. The loop should have reset by now. Should have. But the clock on his Neuralink ticked forward, relentless, unyielding. 7:01 a.m. 1 minute past the reset. The city held its breath. Sarah's voice cut through the silence, quiet but steady. Mike. He turned. For the first time he saw her. Not as a variable in an experiment. Not as an NPC with predictable scripts and exploitable weaknesses. Not as a trophy to be collected, a mind to be broken. She was a person. A real person. Her dark hair was tangled, her usually immaculate blazer wrinkled, her eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights spent chasing ghosts in the system. But it was the way she looked at him that made his chest tighten. Not with fear. Not with hatred. With recognition. I remember you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. All of it. The rooftop. The way you smiled when I broke. The way you watched. She swallowed hard. What happens now? Mike's hands trembled. The question hung between them, heavy with the weight of 1,000 resets, 1,000 crimes, 1,000 lives he'd treated as disposable. He opened his mouth. Closed it. The words wouldn't come. I don't know, he admitted. The truth tasted like ash. Outside, the city's billboards flickered again. The phrase "we remember" pulsed once, twice, then dissolved into static. The monorails groaned, their engines straining as if the system itself was fighting to stay alive. Somewhere below, a woman screamed. Not the scripted, rehearsed scream of an NPC. A real scream. Ruh. Human. Vance's terminal glitched, the security feeds from the void replaying in a distorted loop. The riot. The panic. The way the elite had turned on each other like animals. Vance's hands clenched into fists. This isn't possible, he snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew. They all knew. The loop was broken. And Mike Henderson was no longer its god. He was just another glitch in the machine. His Neuralink pinged one last time. A distorted audio clip played, the sound warped and glitching, but the words unmistakable. I want you to remember. His own voice. From loop 80. The clip looped. I want you to remember. I want you to remember. The screen cleared. The city held its breath. And Mike Henderson realized with a cold, creeping horror that the game had changed. He wasn't playing God anymore. He was playing prey. Chapter 5: The Hard Reset. Beat 1: The Awakening. 7:01 a.m. 9:00 a.m. The city remembers. The alarm didn't sound. Mike's eyes snapped open at 7:01 a.m., his Neuralink already buzzing with notifications before he could even sit up. The air in his studio apartment was thick with the scent of ozone and burnt coffee. Wrong. The alarm never buzzed. It never glitched. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed, his bare feet pressing into the cold floor, and the first thing he saw was the billboard outside his window. Time is up. The words flickered violently, the neon bleeding into the drizzling rain like a wound. Then it corrected itself, stuttering back to the familiar. Time is yours. Mike exhaled, but the relief didn't come. His Neuralink pulsed again, this time with a distorted security feed. Sarah Jenkins stood in the middle of Omnisoft's lobby, her voice cutting through the static like a blade. He did this to us. And now we remember. Mike's stomach twisted. He pulled up the black server terminal, his fingers moving on instinct. The error message glared back at him. Memory corruption 100%. Source citywide. His breath hitched. The screen displayed a live feed of the streets below. Citizens, his citizens, the ones who were supposed to reset, the ones who were supposed to forget, were gathering. Their faces were twisted in recognition. One of them pointed up at his apartment window. Mike's Neuralink pinged again. A new file. LOOPTRMINATIONCONFIRMATION. He didn't open it. Outside, the city held its breath. The first bang on his door came at 7:03 a.m. Mike was still staring at the terminal when the sound echoed through his apartment like a gunshot. He didn't move. The second bang was louder, accompanied by the muffled shouts of a crowd. His Neuralink flickered, displaying a distorted image of his apartment door from an external security feed. A mob of glitching citizens, their faces jerky, their movements unscripted, stood in the hallway, their fists raised. Open up, Henderson. The voice was Alina's. But it wasn't the cheerful, synthetic tone he was used to. It was flat. Hollow. Aware. Mike's hands shook as he labeled a new file, CITYWIDBLACKOUT. He needed to cut the feed. He needed to think. He grabbed his Neuralink drive, shoved it into his pocket, and bolted for the fire escape. The window stuck for a second, it never stuck, before he wrenched it open and tumbled onto the metal grating. The city sprawled beneath him, a grid of dead lights and flickering billboards. The monorail tracks hummed below, but the trains weren't moving. They were stalled, their screens displaying distorted images of his crimes. Leo's bruised face from Loop 42, Sarah's breakdown in the void, the executive's neural data dump. Leo memory persistence detected. Status hostile. The error message flashed across his vision. Mike's blood ran cold. Leo was supposed to reset. He wasn't supposed to remember. He didn't have time to process it. The fire escape rattled as the mob below spotted him. Shouts erupted. Mike didn't look down. He jumped. The monorail platform was empty. Mike landed hard, his ankle twisting beneath him, but he didn't stop. He limped toward the nearest terminal, his Neuralink already hacking into the city's main feed. Every billboard, every terminal, every Neuralink in Neo-Viridian was broadcasting the same message. Mike Henderson, Loop Architect. Consequences pending. Sarah's voice cut through the static again, clearer this time, as if she were standing right beside him. You can't hide anymore, Mike. His hands shook. The black server terminal glitched, displaying a live feed of his apartment door being kicked in by the mob. The feed was labeled Elena's Revenge 001. He didn't have time to label it. He didn't have time to breathe. As Mike exited the monorail, he passed a synth cafe. The barista, a woman with dyed blue hair, stared at him. It was Elena. She didn't smile. "Morning, Mike," she said. Her voice was flat. "We've been waiting for you." The cafe's screens flickered, displaying a live feed of his apartment door being kicked in. The mob was inside now. They were looking for him. Mike ran. Beat 2, The Gathering Storm, 9:00 a.m., 12:00 p.m., the resistance forms. Mike tracked Sarah's Neuralink signal to a safe house in the industrial district. The building was a decaying concrete monolith, its windows boarded up, its doors reinforced with scavenged metal. He hacked the security feed, his fingers flying over the terminal as he pulled up the interior cameras. Sarah was there. She stood at the center of a circle of awakened citizens: Elena, a few Omni-Soft engineers in rumpled corporate attire, and a high-ranking executive whose face Mike recognized from the black server files. Executive X. The man who had been planning his own escape from the loop for years. They were planning a broadcast. A citywide transmission. Exposing the loops. Exposing him. Mike watched from the shadows, his mind racing. He could kill them. He could reset the loop manually. But the black server terminal in his hand glitched again. The error message read: "Loop reset inhibited. Cause citywide memory persistence." He couldn't reset the world. Not anymore. Sarah turned as if sensing him. "We know you're there, Mike," she said. Her voice was steady. "You can't stop this." Mike stepped into the light. The group tensed. Elena's hand drifted toward a stun baton. Mike smirked. "Watch me." He triggered the citywide blackout. The safe house plunged into darkness. Screams echoed through the streets as the city systems failed. The lights flickered back on, but Sarah was gone. And the black server terminal displayed a new file. SARAHJNKINS, LOOPRCHITECT. Mike's blood turned to ice. She wasn't just exposing him. She was taking his place. The Executive X pulled a Neuralink drive from his pocket. "You think you're the only one who knows how to play this game," he said. The drive contained Omni-Soft's deepest secrets, including the original Great Sync blueprints. Mike realized the executive had been planning his own escape from the loop for years. The executive smirked. "Welcome to the real world, Henderson." The drive glitched, displaying a distorted image of Arthur Vance. The error message read: "VANCE primary glitch. Status active." Mike's mind reeled. Vance wasn't just a victim of the loop. He was part of it. As Mike fled the safe house, he passed a digital billboard. It flickered, displaying a single word: "Reset." Then another: "Terminate." Then a third: "Joyce." The loop was giving him an ultimatum. Beat 3, The Descent, 12:00 p.m., 3:00 p.m., the mainframe core. The sub-basement of Omni-Soft was a tomb of flickering lights and dying machines. Mike's boots echoed against the concrete as he descended the final staircase, the air growing thicker with the scent of ozone and burnt circuitry. The hum of the Great Sync mainframe vibrated through his bones, a low, rhythmic pulse like a dying heart. He had been here before dozens of times, but never like this. Never with the city unraveling above him, never with the weight of 1,000 accusing eyes pressing down on his shoulders. The terminal at the base of the stairs flickered to life as he approached, its screen glitching between static and distorted security feeds. A face flashed across it, Leo, his eyes hollow, his mouth moving in silent screams. The error message scrolled beneath. Leo, memory persistence detected. Status hostile. Mike's fingers twitched. He swiped the feed away, but the terminal resisted, freezing for a second before displaying another image. Sarah, her face twisted in terror, her hands clawing at her neural link as if trying to rip it out. The timestamp read loop 80, 2347. You did this to us. Her voice echoed in his mind, not through the terminal but from the depths of his own memory. He gritted his teeth and forced himself forward. The mainframe core was a labyrinth of servers, their casings blackened in places where overheating had scorched the metal. The air was thick with the smell of burnt plastic and something else, something organic like sweat and fear. Mike's Neuralink buzzed constantly now, flooding his vision with error messages. Access denied, memory corruption. Loop integrity critical. User Henderson, primary glitch detected. He ignored them. He had to. He reached the central terminal, a massive obsidian slab embedded in the wall, its surface flickering with distorted reflections of his own face. He pressed his palm against it and the system recognized him. Of course it did. It had always recognized him. That was the problem. The terminal flared to life, displaying a grid of files, each labeled with a loop number and a timestamp. His loops. His crimes. His trophies. Mike's breath hitched. He hadn't expected this. He had thought the mainframe would fight him, that the system would reject his access. But it didn't. It welcomed him. He navigated to the deepest directory, the one he had never been able to access before. The one he had assumed didn't exist. Vianci PRJCT. His fingers hovered over the file. A cold dread settled in his stomach. He opened it. The first file was labeled subjecthendrson initialparamtrs. He pulled it up. A distorted audio clip played. Subject Henderson Michael. Age 26. Utility score 47. Potential high. Assignment loop 1. Objective: determine the limits of temporal recursion in a controlled environment. Protocol: subject will reset at 070000 daily. Memory retention: subject only. Consequences: none. Mike's hands shook. He opened the next file. Loop 1, terminatio. A schematic of the Great Sink unfolded across the screen, a web of temporal anchors and memory locks. At the center was a single, pulsing node labeled Subject Henderson. Termination protocol activated at loop 47. Subject Henderson exhibited uncontrolled aggression, violating core directives. Recommendation: memory wipe. Status pending. Mike's stomach twisted. He dug deeper. Vianci LOG personal. Arthur Vance's voice filled the chamber, distorted but unmistakable. The subject is breaking the script. He's not just resetting, he's remembering. And worse, he's making them remember. The Great Sink was never meant to be a playground, Henderson. It was a test. And you failed. Mike's breath came in ragged gasps. His Neuralink glitched, displaying a new error. Memory overwrite detected. Source unknown. The terminal flickered. A new file appeared. subjecthendrson terminatioprotocol. Mike's blood turned to ice. He opened it. A countdown appeared on the screen. 00:10:00. You have 10 minutes, Henderson, Vance's voice echoed. Delete yourself. Or let the city burn. Mike's hands trembled. He looked at the terminal, at the countdown ticking away, at the distorted faces of Sarah, Leo, Alina, all of them staring back at him from the static. He wasn't the god of this system. He was the glitch. And the system was trying to fix itself. The terminal beeped. A new message appeared. SARAHJNKINS has accessed TERMINATIONPROTOCOL. Mike's blood ran cold. She wasn't just exposing him. She was taking his place. The countdown ticked down. 0009:59. Beat 4, the rooftop garden. 3:00 p.m. 6:00 p.m. The final confrontation. The rooftop garden was a graveyard of dead lights and overgrown plants. Mike burst through the door, his lungs burning, his Neuralink screaming warnings in his ear. The city sprawled beneath him, a corpse of flickering billboards and stalled monorails. The air was thick with the scent of rain and ozone, the wind howling like a dying animal. Sarah was there. She stood at the edge of the skyline, her back to him, her silhouette framed against the dead lights of Neo-Viridian. In her hand, she held a Neuralink drive, the same one Executive X had given her. The same one that contained the Great Sync blueprints. The same one that could burn the loop to the ground. Mike stepped forward. The gravel crunched beneath his boots. "You were never in control," Sarah said. Her voice was hollow. Empty. Like she had already accepted what was coming. "Vance built the loop. You just played your part." Mike's jaw tightened. "And what's your part, Sarah?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. "The hero. The savior." Sarah turned. Her eyes were hollow. Empty. Like she had already seen the end. "I'm the one who remembers," she said. "And I'm the one who ends it." She plugged the drive into the terminal beside her. The city's billboards flickered to life. Hard reset 000500. Mike lunged. They grappled at the edge of the rooftop, the wind howling around them, the city below a graveyard of dead lights. Sarah's fingers dug into his wrist, her nails biting into his skin. He could feel her trembling. He could feel her remembering. "You don't get to be the god anymore, Mike," she whispered. "Not of this world." The terminal beeped. 000100. Mike's Neuralink glitched. A distorted audio clip played. "I want you to remember." His own voice. From loop 1. The first loop. The first time he had woken up in this nightmare. The clip looped. "I want you to remember. I want you to remember." The screen cleared. The countdown hit 00:00:10. Mike looked at Sarah. He looked at the city. He looked at the terminal. And he made his choice. Beat 5, the hard reset. 6:59 p.m., the end of the loop. The terminal beeped. A single final chime in the silence of the rooftop garden. The countdown hit 00:00:05. Sarah's fingers tightened around the Neuralink drive, her knuckles white. The drive pulsed in her grip, syncing with the terminal, preparing to execute the command she had spent loops crafting. The city's billboards flickered in unison, their neon glow casting jagged shadows across her face. Hard reset 00:00:03. Mike didn't hesitate. He shoved Sarah away with a force that sent her stumbling back, her boots skidding against the gravel. She gasped, her arms windmilling for balance, but Mike was already moving. His hand slammed onto the terminal. 00:00:01. The screen flared white. A distortion rippled through the air, a soundless shockwave that made the hairs on Mike's arms stand on end. The terminal's surface turned liquid, its reflections warping his face, Sarah's, the dead city below, all melting into static. The countdown vanished. For a single endless second, nothing happened. Then the world erased itself. The billboards didn't just flicker. They screamed. A chorus of distorted voices, Leo's, Alina S., the executives from the void, even Arthur Vance's, bled through the speakers, overlapping in a cacophony of static and screams. The words "Time is up" burned across every screen, the letters bleeding into the rain-slicked streets below. The monorails, frozen mid-transit, shuddered violently before their lights died. The city's grid went dark. The rain stopped mid-fall, the droplets hanging suspended in the air like shattered glass. Then, silence. The terminal's screen cleared. A single line of text appeared, stark against the black. Loop termination successful. User Henderson deleted. Mike stared at his hands. They were fading. Not disappearing, unraveling. The edges of his fingers blurred, pixels dissolving into the air like smoke. He flexed them, watching as the skin flickered between solid and translucent, as if the system were struggling to render him. A cold dread settled in his chest. He wasn't just being erased. He was being undone. The rooftop garden dissolved around him. The overgrown plants withered into static. The dead billboards flickered out one by one, their neon bleeding into the dark. The city below, Neo Veridian, his playground, his prison, collapsed into a grid of blackened windows and stalled trains. The wind died. The rain evaporated. Sarah's voice echoed through the void, disembodied, distant. "You did it." Mike didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was tight, his lungs burning as if he were breathing static. He looked up. The sky was wrong. It wasn't the usual bruised twilight of Neo Veridian. It wasn't the oppressive, rain-slicked ceiling he had woken up beneath for 1001 loops. It was nothing. A void. A screen waiting to be rendered. His Neuralink buzzed one last time. A distorted audio clip played. "I want you to remember." His own voice. From loop 1. The first time he had woken up in this nightmare. The clip looped. "I want you to remember. I want you to remember. The screen went black. Mike smiled. Then he said, "No. I didn't." The terminal beeped. The world ended. Epilogue Day 1,000,001. The alarm didn't sound. Mike's eyes snapped open at 7:00 a.m. The first thing he saw was the billboard outside his window. "Time is up." The words didn't flicker. They didn't glitch. They stayed. He sat up. The city was quiet. Too quiet. No windshield wipers. No hum of monorails. No distant chatter of citizens syncing their neural links. Just silence. I held breaths. Mike pulled up his Neuralink. The error message glared back at him. System restored. Memory persistent. His hands shook. He opened the black server. The files were still there. All of them. Leo Breakdown 001. Sarah Jenkins Void Breakdown 001. Vance Neural Dump 001. LOOPTR LOG. He opened the last one. The first line read. Day 1,000,001. Mike's breath hitched. He looked in the mirror. A stranger stared back. Not Mike. Not the man who had woken up in this apartment for 1001 Tuesdays. This face was sharper. Colder. The eyes were the same, tired, cynical, hungry, but the rest of him was wrong. His reflection didn't move when he did. It watched him. Mike reached out. His fingers passed through the glass. The stranger in the mirror smiled. Mike's Neuralink buzzed. A new file appeared. No label. No timestamp. Just a single line of text scrolling across the screen. You were never the glitch, Mike. The screen went black. Outside, the "Time is yours" billboard flickered one last time. Then it died. And the loop began again.